to Responsive Web Design with Zurb Foundation 5. My name is Chris Morrow. I actually work here in Atlanta. I work for a company called Soltech. We're a consulting company, multiple clients, from startups to enterprises. There's my Twitter handle if anybody needs to reach out to me or just ping me. So the plan is today not spend too much time on this question because I know most of you guys already know what is responsive web design, so I'm not going to bore you with too much theory. We're going to try to get into more code. Then I'm going to briefly talk about responsive design, the pros and cons. Some of this is, constantly changing and evolving as we have new technologies, new solutions, as we start to forget about older browsers, those that can do that. Then we're going to get into a brief discussion of frameworks. I'll share my opinion of why I like Foundation better. And again, this is kind of an open forum as far as there's projects that I've worked on, whether it's client preferred or whatever, that I'm still working in Bootstrap 3 and working in Foundation, so it's not always just one thing. Then we'll talk about the downloading and setup of Foundation. There's multiple ways to get Foundation installed, from easy to more pain later to a little pain up front and a lot easier down the road, and I'll show you those options for you. We're going to briefly talk about UI dev tools. I'm not sure what tools you guys are using out there, but if you're not using some tooling, hopefully this will open your eyes to some things that you may have not known that existed. And then we'll get into the core of the discussion, which will be using Foundation 5. I'm going to try to show most of the core, grid layout, options for responsive, off-canvas menus, many different kind of mobile-related features that Foundation gives you. I'm definitely not going to share with you every single component that Foundation has and how to customize every component. But I will give you the core, and then hopefully from there you can go out and customize it how you need to. So the brief, quick definition of responsive web design is it's creating a website that dynamically changes, aka responds to all viewport sizes, device orientations, and device resolutions. Now that we have Retina and many other different resolutions out there. And the original person that coined the phrase, F. N. Marcotte, which said the three tenets of responsive web design are: number one, a fluid grid. Fluid meaning 100% percentage-based grid that's constantly changing with the browser width. Flexible media, that's images and video that will scale, and media queries. So let's briefly go into the pros and cons. I'm not going to share with you all different types of pros and cons, and if you can't read the small text up there, it's responsive versus adaptive versus mobile versus app. There's like many different solutions out there, and you have to make that decision of which way you can go. But we're going to focus on quickly just adaptive versus responsive, and you'll see from this graphic that adaptive is a common solution. There's still many sites out there that use just adaptive. They feel that for the users that are visiting their site, they only need a couple of breakpoints, and with media queries, they'll just scale and snap as the browser is resized. Let me go to, this is a good demo site, Liquidaptive. And just to show you, as I'm changing the browser width, it just snaps. Notice that the columns are staying the same width until I get to a certain breakpoint, and then it snaps to a different grid. And then as I come down, again, it snaps to a different layout. So that's adaptive. The quick difference with adaptive versus responsive is, if I can get it to work. All right. So responsive, very similar to adaptive, but notice that the columns, the text is now wrapping as I'm scaling down, the percentages are changing, and then once it gets to a breakpoint, it will do the same thing. So again, a lot more responsive without using the same term. It's kind of redundant, but again, it's a lot more feedback to the user. quickly, when I saw the different approaches, you know, it was a no-brainer for me that I wanted to go responsive and not have that hard snap that adaptive has. All right, so responsive has its pros and cons. The pro is that you have one site that you have to maintain, so you have one code base. The huge win is that it's SEO friendly. You don't have a mobile site and a separate desktop site. They're both the same. And then based on layout or media queries, you can present different content, different layout. And then some people think that this is a crazy statement, but it is actually overall a lower cost to build and maintain versus potentially two separate sites. So if you have a mobile site and an app versus just one site that you're maintaining, you can potentially lower the cost just by having one site to maintain. The cons is, yes, it is more complex code. You have to, you know, detect with media queries. You have to change the layout. You know, a lot of other features where you're dynamically changing the content or feeding the site content based on whether it's a mobile device or not. Some people say a lot of bad performance. Responsive design definitely has a bad name in some areas, but I argue that this is false for the most part. I think we can fix this as we learn more and more responsive techniques and not cause this to happen. Now, the biggest problem with this is, again, you load all of the content on your site for mobile, desktop, every device out there, and you just load it all, and then you just hide things for mobile and show only specific things for mobile. Well, yes, your site's going to be really slow because you're loading a lot of unnecessary things, but there are a lot of techniques, and I'll show you one of the features of Foundation where you can dynamically, based on the device width, orientation, you can dynamically load content through Ajax and just feed that in. Not only images, but HTML you can actually send in. So that way you're not loading unnecessary content. All right, so you go out there today and you Google these terms, you know, adaptive web design, responsive web design, and if you Google this now, you would come up with something like this. It's hard for us to get good information for these acronyms. But the acronyms are actually adaptive web design. There's also another AWD, which is adaptive web delivery, which is kind of what I was hinting at with the server can detect, this is a mobile device, I'm only going to send the mobile this data instead of the full desktop version content. And then responsive web design. A person just coined this phrase, or I've recently heard it, where it's situational web design, and that is based on mobile or GPS, so based on where you're located, it may feed you different content. So the website's constantly changing based on not only the device, but also what situation are you in. You're near this, you know, Walmart, so we're going to feed you this ad, you know, that kind of thing. And then, you know, whatever the next approach is, who knows what's gonna be the next acronym. So a couple of misconceptions is that responsive web design causes poor performance. This is a quote off the site I'm not naming, but basically you can see that it says because the images on a responsive site are just visually scaled down, you're not sending a smaller image for the device, you're loading this huge content and on a small mobile device, and it's really slow. The other kind of hinted at, responsive design is expensive. When compared to a separate mobile site, it definitely can be equal or lower cost, and I think a better experience for most sites. All responsive websites look the same. Well, I'm going to blame Bootstrap and not Foundation for this. So again, that's just a common thing that we do. We grab a framework, we grab some code, it works, it lays out the site, but we don't do the other work to make our site our own. So again, both of these frameworks, Foundation, Bootstrap, many others, are great for prototyping, but we have to go a little further to customize. So someone said this: anyone who embraces responsive web design is stupid. It's this guy, I'm calling him out. But there's actually a YouTube video where he speaks on this, and he's the guy that really talked to situational web design. Responsive web design is, in essence, stupid. All it knows is widths and I'm a device, but it doesn't know situations, and that's what he was hinting at. It's really sending the right content based on the situation, so kind of a false statement there from him. So this is a quote from Zurb. Friends don't let friends design in 960 pixels. Many years ago, I was a fixed width. Any fixed width people back in the day? Fixed width all the way? Yeah. All right. I go back to tables. I was laying out sites on tables for many years. So from tables to fixed width, because you could always count on those pixels and know what the site's doing. But nowadays, I would argue it's hard to have any site that's not responsive at all. So let's see. So frameworks. So frameworks are free. Here's a couple ways you can choose a framework. Anybody use Bootstrap Foundation? How many Foundation users at all? None? Okay. Bootstrap? Bootstraps? All right. So the key with choosing a framework is, number one, try it. I mean, you have to try it to really know if you're interested in it, if you like the way that it's laid out, if it makes sense or not. So first, try it, make an informed decision with first-hand knowledge. You know, even with Angular and Rob Eisenberg presenting his Durandal Aurelia tomorrow, you know, there's many different frameworks for different things, and I would argue just try it. Even if you're already on a bandwagon of sorts, try another framework and see what they do different. You'll learn something. So the second step is understand how it works, not just what it does. So Bootstrap Foundation, it does a lot of magic for you. You add a class and suddenly things lay out perfect for mobile. But if you can understand behind the scenes and really dig into the code a little more, it'll help you, you know, understand the framework better and know if it's more your style of programming. And then I argue, take it apart and even break it. Like, you know, totally break the site. What did I do? And then piece it back together in your own way. So it's really just getting in there, playing with the tools. Even if you break it and don't remember how to put it back together, you can always download a fresh copy and keep going. But it's just a way to learn to continue to actually dig deeper instead of just taking it for what it is. So many of us remember AOL, some of us in the room. And the key is we need to find a faster way to work. Many times we've used standard CSS, but there's a lot of tools out there that can help speed that along. So these are the three, and I know that's really small text, and you may not read that, but the tools are Yeoman, Grunt. There's also Gulp out there. There are other tools emerging. And then Bower is the bird on the right. All these tools do different things. Number one, Yeoman on the left, that's Yo. That will actually scaffold your project. So you can say, hey, I want an HTML5 boilerplate. I can go and I can just type Yo boilerplate or HTML5, and it'll install everything that I need from jQuery, all the necessary libraries that I need, CSS, all of that. And then the middle here, the Grunt, the warthog in the middle is Grunt, a task manager where you can run a local server. Many years ago, I was using MAME on the Mac anyway, and you can also use LAMP or whatever on the PC to set up a basic server without having to go full blown IAS or anything. And again, this is just a quick, you know, server that you can run on your laptop, and it'll compile, it'll download JSON files, everything that you need. It'll act like a real server, and it's a quick way to develop. And again, Bower on the far right is a package manager. That allows you, as you're in your project, instead of having to go out and go, which version of jQuery do I need and what's the exact number, and having to download all of those dependent libraries, you can just simply type Bower install, you know, jQuery latest or jQuery 2.1 and specify which version of a library you may need. So I'm going to quickly go through those, but I've already talked about most of this. This is the biggest for me. I hate refreshing my browser all day, so that's a huge win. is the live reload. You'll see a little bit about that today as I am working with some SAS and compiling the CSS. It automatically will compile my SAS and automatically refresh the browser without having to click refresh every time. And then I said Yeoman starter projects and Bower is just great for dependency management, getting what you need. So which one to choose? There's a number of them. I'm highlighting Foundation today. But it's just crazy, ridiculous, or ridiculous. There's actually a library called Ridiculous out there. You can Google that. But there's many out there to look at. It's worth taking a peek at them and seeing different methods of accomplishing the same thing. But obviously the top two are Foundation and Bootstrap as far as recognized names. And it's really just choose what you like best, what's more your style. And the key, as I showed the AOL slow workflow, we also have a slow site a lot of times. If we just download the whole framework, download the zip file with all those CSS, and we load all of that we're not even using. So always remember to trim back whatever you're downloading and only use what you need for your site. There are times, depending on the project, I may only use the grid for Foundation and nothing else. So sometimes it's really just finding out what you actually need. So we like frameworks. We're going to get into that. So first I want to talk about how to set up Foundation 5. And then we'll go into the grid. Let me go back. All right, so should be able to switch back. You do not see a grid. All right, so we'll go to foundations.zurb.com. If you click the download button, it takes you to 4 primary options. Let me see if I can scale this up. That almost legible. All right, so option 1 is download everything in the world, CSS. Another is Essential. I will say Essential is just grid with no kind of styling at all. Even your buttons will be text links. There will be nothing but a grid and basic, very basic things. So if you want to help to get you most of that way, obviously I think your first go around you should probably just download the complete if you've never used Foundation, just to kind of see the defaults and how everything's working by default. That's the quick way. I'll show you that in just a moment. The Essential, again, bare Essentials at some point, depending on your project, you may only want the grid and none of their styles, and you really want to just put your styles on top. That's a great option. And then the custom download, much like Bootstrap has, where you can actually choose which components that you want. You can say, I don't need pagination, I'm never going to use that, I don't need side nav, any of those things. You can change the colors for your site and kind of set up most of what you want and get you most of the way there to customize your website. I'm going to show this a little bit later. That's kind of small. I don't think I can go any larger. Okay. All right, so number of columns you can see here. It's defaulting to 12, but the framework actually lets you decide how many columns you want. You can make it 6, you can make it 24. It just gets crazy thinking higher numbers than that on a grid system, but some people have gone that far. Generally, I leave it at 12 just because it's just so easy to divide, nice even number. Anyway, so again, we'll show a little bit about that, of how we can customize even the grid, the gutters, which is between each of the columns. We'll see that spacing between each of the columns. You can affect that spacing. Another thing I want you to take a look at is that Foundation defaults to using M's instead of pixels. Anybody out there know the difference, M's versus pixels? Used any of those differences? All right, so yeah, with media queries, if you use M's, it helps in a number of things, primarily font size. If the user changes their font size and they, say I go blind, I'm losing my vision, and I need really, for an accessible site, you want the font really large. So when you go really large, by default, that'll change your widths, and pixels doesn't always pick that up. So M's is just a safe way to scale not only your font size, but also the columns will change layout based on what the M's or what the font size is set at for the user. All right, that's real tiny now. All right, so that was the custom, and then the Sass is actually the preferred way in many instances. Foundation was built to be used with Sass, and then again, they just give the other options for easy download, easy getting used to the framework. But I'll show you the Sass workflow again a little bit later. All right, let's see. You go into a project that I already have downloaded. So I know this is really tiny for you guys, but I'm going to try to grab this. All right, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. Let's see. Can you guys read that on the left at all? Even midway back? All right, let me see if I can customize it. It's scary changing display settings. We'll see what happens. Better? All right, cool. All right, it's large. All right, so by default, if you download the Foundation, the custom, or even the full, the custom, I don't think I haven't really customized it, so I just download everything with all options checked. It'll give you a number of folders. The CSS folder. This will be very similar when we get into the Sass organization of the files, but for your knowledge, I'm going to go into the index file, just a sample file, and you'll see how this is loaded in. All right, so notice that in the file on this line, they're just loading the foundation.css file. And then they have here for you normalized CSS that you can use, as well as app.css. Now, app.css is something I've actually played with. I actually downloaded this and I set up some custom styles in this. But really all you need to know is foundation.css is all of their styles, all of their library. You'll see, let's see. So all of their column styles, everything that lays out the grid, all of that is in the foundation.css file. The common workflow is not to touch this file. So with this workflow, you want to do overrides. You want to come into your app.css, that's your specific styles that'll get loaded after Foundation. And then you'll come in here and you can paste your custom styles into this file. So if I was actually setting up this project, I would come in here. I'm just a copy-paste freak. I don't like typing hardly anything. And I would load my app.css right there. So that way Foundation loads, then my custom styles would load after that, and I could override any Foundation styles that I didn't want to use the defaults on. All right, So when you download Foundation, they give you kind of the kitchen sink of sorts, a little bit of the styles and the common things that you'll use. It'll show you the button styles. You know, these are kind of like the low-hanging fruit. When I need buttons on my site, I need to know a little bit about how the grid works right in this area. But there's many more options that I'll show you in a minute. So I'm not going to spend too much time with this workflow. Again, you just override existing Foundation styles in your app.css. I'm going to move on to actually customizing with using Sass. Has anybody used Sass out there yet, compiling into CSS? Okay, so good number of people. All right, so I'm going to get out of this project. All right, let's see. All right, so now I'm moving into a Sass-based project. This is using libsass. I just recently moved over to libsass. The short is there's Compass that can compile Sass, and now there's libsass, another library that the benefit of libsass is it works on PC without having to install Ruby, and it's been found to be faster. I hear huge numbers. For me, it does potentially get cut in half. You know, it's like a second and a half to like, you know, half a second kind of stuff. So it is definitely like, definitely 200% faster than using Compass. But the short answer is it compiles faster, and so I just went ahead and adopted it. It does not give you, with using libsass for compiling Sass, it doesn't give you everything that Compass has, but for most of those things, I don't really need all of what Compass has to compile. All right, so let's see. Let's go into the grid. I want to go ahead and, all right, let me stop. All right, so the setup on the Sass project, I think you can see these. So generally with a Sass project, you would have an app.sass file. Think of this as your master framework. This is everything that's getting loaded into your project and getting compiled to app.css. And let's see. Yep. Okay. So you can see right now I'm loading everything. I'm loading a settings file. I'm going to go into that in just a second. And then all of the different components that are out there. The grid, number one. But I could easily comment this out, and now the alert boxes will not get compiled into my project and not bloat my website CSS. So you can easily comment all of these components out. Only what you're using, you can leave uncommented. And then at the very end, I'm importing a file called app styles. And again, you guys can lay this out however you may want. But I load all of the foundation stuff, all of the kind of settings files, and then I load my custom app styles. You see my, I have a Sass mix in up here. And we'll see that compiled in just a moment. But then I load all of my styles. And again, if you're familiar with Sass, underscore in the file name means that this file is going to get just basically compiled into whatever file is importing it. So in the app.sass file, I'm loading app styles. It automatically looks for underscore or no underscore on the file name, and it loads all of these different files above. And then since the file doesn't have an underscore, that's the actual final CSS file. And you can see in this folder, that's what app.css is rendered into. So all of that comes into this. And let's see. All right. So now that we have that. So anytime I make changes into app styles, it's going to automatically compile my CSS. Let's go ahead and just jump into the grid, and I'll show you guys some of that. I think I got rid of my grid. All right, let's see. All right, so by default, again, this project, again, loads everything, all the styles that you might want as the kitchen sink of sorts. Let me go over to... All right, so the first page is the grid. Let's talk about the grid a little bit. By default, I said that you will have 12 columns, and let's go ahead and jump into this code. Everybody still read it that large? All right. So the first thing to know for the grid is, I'm going to get rid of this. Let's ignore that. I'm going to gray it out so you guys can't pay attention to it. All right, so if you don't use Sublime Text shortcuts or know any of those, you can actually just type dot on a div and it'll append a class. I'm not sure if that's emit. You might have to get the emit plugin to do that, but very handy. So I could do div.row, and that creates a row. So in the grid, everything has to have a row, be nested inside of a row. Always, never an option. Once you're inside of a row, the direct next div must be a column of some sort. So just inside of a row, you have to do some sort of columns. And I'm just hard coding this now. I'm going to use some snippets that'll speed this up a little bit more. But right now I'm going to say, let's see. The grid does have a number of sizes: small, medium, large, extra large. I think there's even huge or whatever. There's like 4 or 5 different media queries and different classes you can use. Small, medium, and large being the primary ones. So I'm just going to go with large 6 columns. Oh, I need to add a S. I prefer column or columns will work. So if I load this, I'm just gonna. So I have a class I think called call block. Pretty sure. All right, I made a square. It's wonderful. To see this more in depth, let's see. All right. So some of the custom styles I added was this display class, just so that you can see the background color. So now you'll see 2 columns. The one on the left, I added the call block, which has like a fixed height of 400 pixels, just so we can see the column. And then the one on the right, which has no content in it right now. So this empty column is on the right in the gray. I think I have a class. I don't know. No, I don't think I have that class. All right, so that's the basic. All right, so I actually put red on the right so that we can see the 2 different ones. So 2 columns. By default, large, it is going to be 2 columns. Foundation is mobile first, so almost all things will go back to 1 column by default. If you do not choose anything for mobile, it's going to default to 1 column. So see now, the right column in the red below, you can see that red outline on the edge, is now underneath. Let me get rid of that block so we can see the red better. All right, so there you go. So as I size down by default, it's going to stack. All right. Now, another thing about the grid, like I said, you can customize it. So we're back to our 12 columns. I'm going to go into the settings. I'm going to show you a little bit about the power of the settings of Foundation when you're in the SAS workflow. So in the settings file, you can't see anything right yet, but I'm going to get to that real quick. It has everything laid out. Yeah, that gray text you can't see. I can uncomment some of this so you can see it. Can you read some of that now? So again, it has everything kind of itemed out: base, grid, global. All of these different styles in this settings file. I'm going to comment that out so I don't mess up my code. I'm just going to highlight the grid and jump down. So see this text here, total columns 12. That's the default setting. All I have to do is go in here and change it to whatever I want. Now it's 24, twice as many. We have a problem. What's happening? So the quick thing is right now I have 12 columns in there, but it's asking for 24, so it only goes halfway across. You'll see that things will lay out right once I change my HTML. So now that I'm on a 24 grid, I always have to count. All my columns have to add up to 12 to really flow. And I have some sample code here with 24 columns, which is crazy. I'm going to show it. Oh, sorry, I got one more. So here's the gotcha also. So I had another row at the top that was at 12, so I have to set it to 24 as well. So now we have crazy 24 columns, but it's really spaced out. That's tiny columns. That's not what we want. We want like a lot of columns with maybe just a little bit of spacing. So again, you can come back, and the power of the settings is you can change your gutter width. That's right here. Again, everything's using rim calc mix-ins, things like that, which are based on your font sizing and the zoom level. All of that's taken into account. And I'm just going to comment that out. Just make it a smaller number. Instead of 30, I'll go to 10. And now you'll see the switch. So now the gray areas, the gutter width is now a lot smaller, and we have larger columns for the 24 setup. Many other things that you can do in here for sure. It has everything that you would want to customize the primary components that they offer. There are a few instances where you have to kind of roll your own and override their existing, but almost everything, including color, padding, all of that is in this file. So the settings file will get you most of what you need there. They also, you can, not everyone does this, but for me, if you want to change the theme of your site, having a colors SAS file is handy. This is just outside of Foundation, but they've implemented it, and you can just customize any colors that you may want on your website, and then you go into this one file, change a few lines, and you can change the whole theme of the site. All right, let's go back to the grid. Oh, let me switch my columns back to default because I'm going to get mixed up if I stay in 24. Let's see. 12. All right, so we're back to our 12 columns. All right, let's talk about offsets. So offsets, just Bootstrap has the same thing. This is very tiny for you to read. Let me just go into that file. That's not the title ordering. Okay. All right, so offsets. Let me get rid of that sidebar. All right, so here you can see I have a medium offset 2. And let me go into details on this actually. Let me see. All right, so let's see. That's not good. Let's just take that out. Let's make this easier. I'm gonna let small default to the 12, and now I'm gonna do the medium 2. All right, so again, the key is adding up to 12 is usually the best for layout, right? So I have a medium 2 and then a medium offset 2, which will move it over 2 columns, basically put margin on the left, and then I have an 8, medium 8 width on the right. All right, so there you go. So you can see on the left is the offset, just puts margin on this medium 2, and then the medium 8 just takes up the remaining of the column of the row. All right, let's look at ordering. Oh, that's not ordering. All right, so ordering. say on desktop you want the side nav, and then maybe your client comes and tells you, well, when it goes to tablet, I would like the menu on the right. And you're like, okay, well, I can do that. It'll take me 20 hours, but with Foundation, it takes like a second to change a class name. So you can see as you scale down, it'll actually change the ordering of the divs and switch one column. And that is the push and pull. Bootstrap 3, again, has the same feature, is the push and pull on ordering. Let's get the sidebar back up. All right. I have duplicate pushes. All right. So the key here is on this column. I don't know if you can even see. Okay, so at the very top line here, medium-push 6. What that does is wherever the column is, it moves the whole column that many columns over. So you can push it however you want. Generally for a swap, again, you're just going to push, I've only ever swapped really. So again, if you want to push the one on the left side, you want to push it to the end, and then the column on the right, you'll do a pull 6, and it'll bring it to the left. And again, you can specify when that happens. So at the media query, like when I'm at tablet width, then it'll do this behavior only. Notice that there also is another class. Foundation, all of it's semantic, and you can just chain all of these classes together to get the desired results you want. So at medium tablet size, it'll swap the columns, but then when you get back to large, it'll reset the order. And that's another class name here at the top in the white is large reset order. So on small, and we'll see if we can see this. So small by default is going to stack it, the regular ordering. When I hit the medium, it's going to push the links on the right, and then the desktop, going back to our default behavior, we reset once we go to the large, and we put the nav on the left. You guys see that? All right, so that's ordering. Lost all of my workflow there. All right. Ordering. Let's see. I'm pretty sure you do. I'm fine with doing a demo real quick. Let's see. No, if I can. There it is. Okay. All right. So the ordering. Let me find the ordering up. I'm pretty sure you do, but let's see. So yeah, if you push one over and the other one stays where it is. All right. Save that, and there it is back. All right, so at the grid ordering is... So grid block, I would actually like to show you that too. So this is only in Foundation. Bootstrap hasn't come up with anything like this. I thought that between Bootstrap 2 and Bootstrap 3, because this block grid existed like a number of years ago, so I thought Bootstrap might incorporate something like this, but they haven't done it yet. Obviously, you can create your own with Sass mix-ins and things like that, but it's in Foundation by default. And what the block grid is it's a very easy way to set. It's good for callouts or anything that you're going to have a lot of repeating elements, and you want it to have a nice clean grid, but you don't want the bloat of like row, 5 columns, and all of these divs nested, and you just want a clean HTML. Well, the block grid is actually just an unordered list, and I'll show you that. So here's the block grid. So you can see here I have small. I want a block grid of 2 cells. So it'll show 2 columns in small. It'll show 4 cells on medium block grid 4. And then it's just a flat list of LIs. And if I was actually to be accurate, I should probably just keep putting these images in so we'll see it easier. But you can see you can just have any number of these, and it always keeps a nice clean grid of 4. That size down, it automatically snaps to two columns. So it's just a very good flat. This is perfect for like angular stuff where you want just a repeat of one flat HTML element. So it's a very handy thing. So that's the block grid. All right, let's make sure I'm going in order. Go. All right, so yeah, responsive images and media. I'm in a good place there. All right. Okay, so by default, images, as we mentioned earlier, it's scaled. It's generally just scaled. Notice that it's saying large 800 by 800 image. It's scaling the percentage. That's good. It's staying in my viewport. It's not giving me a horizontal scroll bar. God forbid the horizontal scroll bar. And that's great, but it's not quite where we want to be. We would actually want to show a different image and not just scale this down. And we all know that scaling images, without, potentially you have a worse quality image by scaling as well. So video is a similar problem. Plain old video, if you get in here, I don't know if you can see, but I have a horizontal scroll bar at the bottom. Plain video doesn't scale at all. And then one way by default is to scale the video 100% so it fits, but then you have aspect ratio problems and the video doesn't render correctly. Well, there's a number of solutions out there. Picture Fill 2.0 is one. If you don't go with a full framework, that is one solution that can work. There are other CSS hacks with just adding padding to a parent div, but Zurb just makes it easy. They have Flex Video. All you really do is put an iframe YouTube or iframe anything. Just put the video in bed, and then around the parent, and I'll show you the code real quick. Around the parent div, all you do is add a Flex Video class, and they have all the styles needed just in CSS to make it work. That's the key. There's many JavaScript out there, but it's nice that just with CSS, it just works. Let's see. So you can see here, there's Flex Video, and I have a widescreen class. If it's a widescreen, if it's 4:3, you just leave off the widescreen class here, and it'll be a 4:3 ratio. With the Sass, you can actually customize this for custom ratios that you might have. But again, out of the gate, most videos, you have what you need, and then you can customize from there. Again, they give you the foundation, and you can go from there. So with just that Flex Video and widescreen, and you can see I just have a YouTube iframe, go to YouTube, embed code, and then paste that in the middle of it, and it will just automatically scale. You can see as I come down, it scales to fit. And it also keeps the aspect ratio of the video wrapper. All right, quick commercial break. I don't have any audio. That's not going to be good. All right, I'll scratch that. But it's Dreams of Bacon. I don't know if you've seen this commercial. There's actually an Oscar Mayer app that will wake you up and puff out the scent of bacon. They're about to show it. I'm about to see it. Let's see it there. Wait for it. There's the bacon smell. All right, so as I was talking about, there's a better way. Interchange is where we can serve up different content, different images. So the first is a different image. As I scale down, notice that it switched to medium 500 by 500, just to show that that's not an overlay and I'm not cheating. If I open that image, it actually has medium 500 by 500. It is a separate image. So just scaling down, it'll actually load separate images for different media queries, different ranges. the code for that. Again, most of this stuff you guys can go back and look and dig in and get most of it, but I like to see it, you at least see how simple it is. So they use the data attribute, data-interchange, and then you can pass in an array of images. So there's the small image, and notice that it's followed up by default. And then again, you go in here and we have medium. You can actually type in any image, like I could say medium, and I could use that for medium and large, however I want. I could say, you know, X large. Actually, let's see. Ooh, that's huge. All right, so anyway, you could type any media query that you have, any of those media queries. We'll look a little more details on those media queries, but you can type that name in, and it will load that image at that media query range. So interchange 2. The great thing is now you can load in content. This is handy. I know we have a lot of CMS systems and we load things, but for maybe a lot of static sites, but you want it to be a little more dynamic than static, at least show different content and only load what you need. This is a quick way to get content loaded for particular pages. So, and notice as I scale down, it's actually loading. This is not showing in hiding divs, and I will show you the setup in just a second, but it's actually dynamically grabbing HTML file and loading it into the page. So for large, medium, and then small, any media query that you want to set up. Let's see. So interchange 2, you see here the white text highlighted. Interchange / medium.html. It's actually loading these files, and it's just much like a template in Angular or any of those JS libraries that dynamically load content based on a template. It's loading this HTML file in. You can see for medium, I can type in ZZZ for this medium.html, and as I refresh, there's the ZZZ. So it's loading that file in as we change different sizes. All right. How much time do I have? What time do we get out of here? Need a reminder on that. 20? 20 minutes. Okay. Oh, okay. 5:15-ish? All right. Great. All right, let me jump to forms real quick. So Foundation has forms, a lot of built-in components that you might need. First is, you know, like radio buttons, checkboxes. They have all of them. I could go into more detail on this, but I honestly am going to just skip that. I want to show you another cool thing before we get out of time. So components, I could have shown you a million different things on components, but the quickest way is just to go to Foundation site. If you get to their site and go to, let's see, I'll step you through everything. So if you go to foundation.zurb.com, click on the docs in the top right, and then as you scroll down on the left, just click the kitchen sink, and you can quickly see kind of all of the components that they have available for you. Anywhere from, you know, the block grid that I showed you, which is great for galleries or any kind of repeating elements, to their pagination, buttons, all of that. Also, I will note Foundation 5 doesn't support IE6 or IE7, so if you need to go back to those browsers and support those, you will have to jump back to Foundation 4. There are versions of that which have many of the features that I'm showing today. Doesn't have interchange, but you can actually add on interchange in the Foundation 4. Another great thing about Zurb is they have, let's see if I can find it. They have a lot of labs and building block kind of templates for you to use, many different components. So you can go into this site and just see, you know, oh, there's a parallax site, and just a sample of what that looks like. You know, I'm scrolling through, it's got a little parallax effect, and the code for it. So there's many cool things that Zurb has, code samples, many different templates. Urge you to just check that out. And then of course they have, you know, a site on responsive, all things responsive, and some sites that that have been built with Foundation, and you can kind of see some of the cool sites out there being built and different techniques. So yeah, they just have many different free resources for you. Let me go back. All right, so I'm going to get into the media queries. I kind of went a little bit out of order here, for sure. I'm all over the place. That's set up. We've already been there. And grid, we'll stop that. Responsive images. This is my checklist. All right, so media queries. So as I said before, Foundation used ems, so it's whatever the width in pixels that you want divided by their assumed base font size of 16 pixels, but we know that that can change, which is what gives us the ems. So their media queries, to actually get the small, they assume 0 to 640 pixels. That equals 0. It's actually 0, 40M for the range, but 40M equals the 640 pixels. So again, just dividing 640, the total width, by the base font size of 16 gives you that 40M. All right. So, and then there's a medium. There's large, which is great for most anything. I've never used extra large. The reason is because all of these media queries build on themselves. You start with small. By default, it's going to default to 12 columns. Always go basically one column full width, 100%. If you do not provide anything, it's always going to be 12 columns or whatever. But now, if I want to override the behavior, then I can type in a medium query, and now anything medium, that's tablet size and up, or whatever you define medium to be. Medium could be, 800 pixels or whatever you decide. But once you hit medium, everything's going to be at that level until you override it with large. So it builds on top of itself. Again, mobile first. It starts with small. You add a class for medium-6, and now it's going to become, half, 50%, column. Large, I can switch it back to large-12, and now it's going to be full width column. So it overrides, builds on itself. Let's see. We talked a little bit about the customization. I'm going to say one note on the components that hangs up a lot of people is when you're loading things with Ajax in Foundation, you can get into why is my component not working? Why is nothing working? So the quick thing is that any JavaScript component in Foundation, that's their modals, anything that requires JavaScript, they have a document.foundation call. And what that does is it binds every element that has maybe a data interchange or anything like a modal, anything that requires JavaScript to be created or used, this binds to the elements. So you want it after your document.ready in jQuery. So after the page is loaded, all the elements are loaded, you want to call this. If you load something with Ajax after the page has been loaded, after that Ajax comes back and the elements are rendered, then you want to make this document.foundation call again to rebind any new elements on the page. So that's the quick thing just to save you some headaches and time of Foundation sucks, it's not working, none of their components work. So that's one quick gotcha that could get frustrated if you don't pay attention to it. All right, let's see where else we're at. All right, so make it your own. There's many things you can do. Let's see if I can jump around and show you some of this stuff. I think the next slide might be no, it's not. Maybe it's not. All right, let me try to show a little bit about this. I know I'm all over. So I would not be fully saying everything that I need to say about responsive design if I didn't show you a couple of tools. First off is Google Chrome with emulation. I'm sure most of you know it, but just in case there's someone in the room that doesn't, I should show it. Let's get a site that actually... All right, so basic. So Chrome DevTools, we already know that we can go into DevTools a number of different ways, more tools, and go into developer tools. Obviously, so once you have the developer tools, you can toggle device mode. And now I can emulate whatever device I may want to emulate. iPhone 6, there we go. And then you can see it in that dimensions. You can actually change it to landscape mode. Actually gives me the touch device as well. So that's one quick way to see how your site's doing on, this is not a good sample. There's a grid, 12 column. If I switch to tablet, we don't need to go there. Where's an iPad? There it is. Still 12 columns. All right. So anyway, emulation through Google Chrome is one way. Firefox is responsive view. I'm not going to show that. iOS simulator, if you have Xcode on a Mac, then you can run it through the simulator, which is pretty close for getting iOS devices. Browser Stack is a subscription service that you can go for, and that'll have a lot of devices, but many of those are emulators as well, so you can't fully trust that. The other option is use your own real devices, borrow one from a friend. Ghost Lab on the Mac, it's like $60. It's pretty inexpensive, and that allows you to browse a website on your computer, and any device that you have, you can actually connect on the same Wi-Fi, and everywhere you browse, it will show up on the actual device. So you could have like as many devices as you want, and it would constantly update all of those devices. It's a great like QA tool. And then Adobe Edge Inspect is the one I use mainly because I have Creative Cloud and I get it for free, so why not use it? Let's see. So I'm going to see if I can connect. So Adobe Edge Inspect, the way that works is it's a tool that's running and there's a Google Chrome plugin. And I'm connecting now. So what you can see on my phone is that the grid is full width on my phone. I can navigate to a different site. Let's see, I can actually, anywhere I navigate on this, my phone will sync up and go to the same site, whatever I'm testing. So there's Apple. See that? That's better. Let's see. So I'll go back to my page, wherever I'm navigating. Offsets, what else we do? Images. So anyway, everywhere you navigate, you'll see it on the device and it syncs up. It's just a very handy tool to quickly see things where you're at, rather than just, I mean, obviously, first level is browser width, get the widths looking right, but then actually see it rendered on the real devices is key. Let's see, that's pretty much it. So I wanted to leave time for open questions, anything you guys have, and obviously afterwards I'd welcome talking to you and helping you through anything. Yes, sir. The bottom right is an add-on. I know Google Chrome, once you have the DevTools open, it does give you the width. So let's see if I close the tools. It's either, it doesn't show a width in the top right, but if you have the tools up, it will give you the viewport in the top right up here. But to answer your question, I do not know the name of that. I think it is right here. What's it called? Buy them coffee. What's the name of it? I don't even know. See me afterwards. I'll figure out the name and I'll get it to you. But yeah, I liked it. It's a quick way to again change the width of your viewport. Window resizing? Yeah. There's so many window resize me, resize it. Yeah, not knowing. Yes, ma'am. Which one? The one in the bottom right? Anybody else have any questions? Let's see. Where's the icon? Oh, it is called Window Resizer. Let's see. Back on page. That's a crazy link to give you, but it is called Window Resizer by Buddhism. So, again, I hope you at least got a good sample of Foundation. I didn't build a site in a few minutes and show you, it is a quick tool to help you get there. I urge you to check out the developer tools if you're not using Grunt or Bow or any of those. It is kind of scary. I know I was definitely a non-command line person years ago, but just by knowing a few commands, it really can increase your workflow. And just a couple of commands, you can automatically compile your SAS, reload the site, load JSON files, all those wonderful things you want in a local dev environment. And it's pretty awesome that everybody's contributing to everything. So hopefully you'll check that out, and I appreciate everybody coming. You can come up and ask any questions.